Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Kevin Lee Social. Thank you for tuning in. What initially began as an 8-part series interviewing entrepreneurs to share and inspire how they've successfully pivoted during COVID-19, I have decided not only to continue this series, but also to expand on the scope to understand and learn about people's craft, philosophy, the challenges they face in the industry, and their favorite failures that have helped shape them to become who they are today. By going deeper and understanding different thought leaders, businesses, and industries, the idea is to help cross-pollinate ideas applicable in your life and inspire action in this new norm we live in. I hope you enjoy the show. Thank you. Before we get on with the show, today's podcast is sponsored by Altitude Tea. Altitude Tea specializes in rare and exotic teas you can't find on supermarket shelves. Teas grown on high altitudes are more nutrient dense due to the cold nights and misty peaks that slows the growth of the tea plant, leading to a higher concentration of aromatic oils and richer flavors. They are located in Waterloo and they do private tea ceremonies where you can learn how to drink tea mindfully using a traditional gongfu set and have over 20 varieties of tea to choose from. For our listeners, you can use the code BEYOND at checkout for 15% off. Hey Dan, my man, how are you doing?
Amazing. How are you doing this morning, Kevin?
Mate, woke up excited to have a chat with one of my good mates over what's been happening in the past year. I had you on my first anniversary podcast doing a reverse interview. And here we are for the second year anniversary. And this time it's not particularly a reverse interview. It's a catch up between mates to see what's been happening in our lives. So what we've been learning about, what we've been doing, how's work been, what's been happening, what's new.
Yeah. Mate, good to be here. I can't believe it's been 2 years.
Yeah.
We've been talking about this for years now. You've been doing it for years now. So congratulations. It's your anniversary. That's quite a feat. I've definitely been listening, as always. But yeah, congrats.
Thanks, my man. I appreciate you following my journey and to being there throughout the years, which makes you the perfect candidate to have these check-in calls with.
Mate, glad to be here.
2 years ago when I started this, it was during COVID.
Yes.
Smack bang in the middle of COVID. Lockdown was happening.
Yeah, first Sydney stint, right? The 6 weeks.
That's it. And so that's where I got the idea to start this podcast and go, all right, let's give 8 episodes a go.
Yep.
I can't really go out anyway. Let's connect with people around the world or some amazing people that I know. And let's give it a go. And here we are 2 years later, the project continues.
My testament to you again, like I don't have to repeat this much. The connections that you do have around the world are quite expansive. So it's actually beneficial to us as listeners that you're able to share your thoughts on the people that you connect. So thank you for being so consistent and sharing those tidbits with us.
That's a very positive feedback for me because sometimes I wonder if there's any value for the listeners because the topics can be so ranging and the people are from such a vast different industry that I sometimes get caught up thinking, I wonder if people can find value in this conversation because yes, it may not be completely related to your industry, but if you're open-minded and if you're curious, I believe you can always make a connection.
100% for the listeners, they don't know, Kevin and I have had a relationship. We've been hanging out and met, 3 years ago? And we talk a lot. And one of the themes that we always talk about, Kev, is it's actually the 1% of information that you take away. And often that doesn't actually lie in things that we're interested in. Sometimes, like I remember one of the best conversations you've had for me was with, I forget his name, but he's an AI artist, was based in Germany, Turkish background from memory. And just listening to his design process and his design was just like super ear-opening and eye-opening. Then obviously your conversations about meditation and that practice. And then in your latest podcast about crypto altruism.
That's right.
Yeah. And all these, there you've got 3 different themes. But the value that lied underneath was definitely there. So I don't know. If one person picks up 1% of every conversation, then I guess someone's learning.
Yes, that was the artist was Boro Identu. He's based
So
on that. He's amazing, a beautiful mind, really. Very interesting thoughts. Thinks very deeply about topics, and it also challenges me in that process as well because some of these topics I'm no expert in, and so I'm still learning about their industry and what their work is about.
yeah,
So I have to do the research. I have to be focused more than enough to understand what they're talking about,
yeah,
and asking the right questions to probe a little bit deeper as well. Over time, I feel that the questions are improving my style of questions and my listening skills,
yeah,
but it feeds my hunger of curiosity to continue to learn from different people. And we live in such an amazing time where this technology allows us to do that. For example, the most recent event, the project of the Butterfly Effect DAO.
yes,
What we do is we raise funds through visual campaigns to reinvest into green startups or community-driven initiatives.
yes,
And we're looking for people to collaborate with, and we did a bit of searching around. Kostya, one of our team members, reached out to a company called Species Unite. And
yeah.
it turned out that that was by Elizabeth Novogratz, which is the sister of
Was that?
Mike Novogratz.
Yeah, okay.
And it was just amazing that we could reach out, connect online, and possibly work on a collaboration that we're working on. And it's what a time to connect all the way around the other side of the world with amazing minds and amazing people and do collaborations. Seriously, think global.
Yeah, amazing. That's amazing. There you go. It's questionable to ask whether or not maybe as a society we would have had the confidence to start doing this, right? Had it not been for being forced into lockdowns. But now you're connecting the family of a gentleman who's highly regarded in his space or in this space.
Mm.
So that's wild. That's super wild.
Yeah. So what's been happening in your space over the past year, Dan? What's been going on?
My space is a little bit different, similar to some of your business. I run a very physical space. I run a physical business, physical being bricks and mortar. And so really in the last year, outside of being closed, it's about reopening and navigating that space and those challenges. It's no question that we've all not gone through the most recent challenges of life. So yeah, that's realistically what everything in mind is. My whole mind has been taken over, not necessarily saving, but regrowing what is my humble little business, which I'm sitting in now.
You've been running your business for what, over 9 years now?
Yeah, we're technically in year 10.
Year 10. There you go.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. That's funny. As of next week, we'd be going into year 9 in the shop, and year 10, year 11 in total.
Yeah, well, there you go. So although you say small, humble business, it's a feat for any business to stay for that long, let alone in the Strand, which is one of the most iconic buildings in Sydney.
Yeah, I'd say a feat or just plain stubbornness. I'm yet to decide as to which one of that crazy it is. But yeah, thank you. No, it's great. Like, again, man, all the challenges aside, being a small business owner is probably one of the most fulfilling things that I've ever done in my life, and probably will continue to do into my older years. Being a small business owner is a challenge, but every day you get a different pat on the back and a different smile. You meet new people and you push around different challenges. It's lots of fun when you're allowed to do it. Yeah.
And so with this restart up, you said, because of all the lockdowns and all the closures and all this bullcrap that's been going on with COVID.
Yes.
How are you looking things in a different light, or are you looking things in a different way?
Mate, amazing question. For years, we were trained as a society to think that business was only about making money. And so coming out of everything that we all went through, a lot of people are still doing that, and good on them. I wish them all the best. But I realized that for my business to become a truer representation of myself, it was actually about understanding how people think and feel. Really changing the dynamic around conversation has been important. Understanding people's feelings and the way that they interact with the business, as opposed to me making them interact with me was more important. Yeah. So, the conversations are definitely all pegged around different themes, even though the milestones are the same. In my business, I specifically seem to see people during important periods of their life. So to give you guys context, I make custom suiting or custom men's tailoring specifically. And we're based in the middle of the Sydney CBD in a quite iconic space, which nurtures specifically a lot, which nurtures the wedding market a lot. So when I meet people, it is arguably based on one of life's milestones, which is quite beautiful. But a lot of those special days, those weddings, those christenings, those big birthdays were put on hold. And for some people, it's been quite stressful. For some people, there's been a lot of financial loss. That starts to simmer different emotions, different feelings around what was initially supposed to be a quite joyous day. So it's made my business a lot more fun because everything now, I'm part of a celebration, right? So it's my responsibility to understand the hardships that people have gone through. And more importantly, try and take away some of those burdens so that they can enjoy it again, be it 1 or 2 years delayed and whatever stresses that come along with that. And then aside from that, I think it's important if, my business is of my career, which is like anti-small business. So people don't listen to me. Small business is supposed to make money and help you retire. Don't do it the way I do it. My business is my career, and I look forward to being able to do this well into my 60s and then maybe later in that life. Then connecting with lifelong stories is a bit more important, right?
You've always focused on how people feel, I believe, from my first connections with you. But it's going above that level of basic needs. So instead of people just getting a suit made, that's the basic need. And obviously you're taking it to a further level and trying to understand how they're feeling, and maybe even a further level of deeper meaning of transformative behavior. Like, for example, a milestone events, weddings and christening, or a milestone event in someone's life.
Yeah, man, I think we're trained for that, right? It's, when you grow up, or at least when I grew up, there were little kind of life milestones. Your 16th birthday, you got your L's kind of thing, your 18th birthday, 21st. And then after that, you get a job, or you go to university, and then the next important ones are getting married and have kids. They seem to be the ones that I'm mostly involved in. Wouldn't mind catching the world at an earlier age. Yeah, I'm just trying to understand what that means to people, if anything at all.
Yeah,
it's a fun time because it's also proving that some of my thinking is incorrect.
Yeah,
which I'm totally okay with.
That's a great way to. I think that's a very, definitely a deeper way to think about your consumers and your customers and your clients, because I think these days it's not enough to just meet their immediate needs. Definitely.
Not going to agree more.
You have to dig deeper and think about things that maybe they haven't already thought about. And yourself trying to go behind and understand the psyche of your clients is very clever. Difficult, but it's definitely worth continuing to understand. And there's such different profiles, right? I think one who's looking for, that's my guess anyway, like one who's looking for a suit for a wedding versus someone who's just wanting to look his best all the time, or one for his work, or one for, there's different personas, and they bring different meaning to why they want to be dressed up the way they are.
Totally. But it's the same as you in one of your businesses, Kevin, like making a quality coffee, for example. That's the bare necessity. That's the baseline of that's a given. It's the other things which are the extra. And I think for a long time, maybe it's just because when you look at the way that markets are built, everything's built around luxurious branding and so on and so forth. So there's a little bit of smoke and mirrors that occurs, I believe, because you can hide a service behind a name. Whereas, again, maybe I wouldn't have thought like this 2.5 years ago. But if your baseline is quality goods no matter what, then the experience actually comes in the interaction. And again, I don't know many people where this the last few years hasn't been a traumatic experience. So we need to heal that trauma together, even though we all had different experiences, and forget that it happened, even though it's still there staring us square in the face. It becomes this beautiful toing and throwing. And like you're saying, it's society. But man, quality of goods on business chat, that's a non-negotiable. Yeah. And I think it should be for everybody. Unless, I don't know, unless people place their product in a space where they want it to bring.
On that, I've been reading a book. I'd like to recommend a book. It's called, it's by Chip Conley. And he wrote a book, I think it was titled along the lines of how businesses get their mojo from Abraham Maslow. So Abraham Maslow is one of the guys that created that, the human needs pyramid chart. And you've got your base needs of level, and it goes up to social acceptance, and then it goes to the top end, which is transformative.
Yeah.
And it's just the basis of the human psyche and the way we live. And he goes into that psychology standpoint in businesses, and it's interesting how he positions it. Like he has a pyramid structure for the employees, one for customers, and then another one for investors and so on. So definitely worth checking out related to what we were talking about.
Yeah, totally.
But I've been thinking of similar things over the past year. We spoke about on the last podcast, I was trying to get a restaurant up and running in St. Leonard's. Finally, it's up and running. So it has launched.
You hit me to the punch. What's happening? What's been happening on your side?
Well, it's interesting because I've never really run a restaurant before. Cafe games I've been in for a couple of years, but restaurants are a different beast. It's you're dealing with all these amazing professional chefs and bartenders, maitre d's and hosts, and it is a whole different ball game.
Yep.
Like we were saying before, it's not enough to just be another restaurant on the block.
No.
Service is expected. Good food is expected. Clean environment is expected. That's the norm. And especially the space that we were entering at, casual fine dining, the bar steps up a few more levels. We have, and being in our current climate of COVID still, we don't have enough staff in the hospitality industry. And we've had these many conversations before. A struggle for a lot of people in this industry.
Yeah.
Without enough staff, how do you run
any business?
Yeah, any business for that matter. So
workers, then how do we get to work?
Yeah, and it's the shortage of skilled workers as well. And we've been struggling to be open as much as we'd like because we don't have enough staff. But that's not a unique story at the moment. It's the narrative of many restaurants.
Yeah. But there we go. So how do you navigate that for your client? Because obviously we talk about the narrative being the same. It always will be, right? Like we all had the same 2 years. We all had the same stay-at-home challenges. We all had the same closures challenges, but we all have a different story.
Yeah.
You know, and watching you from afar, I'm lucky that I can watch you from afar and then up close and then see how you've been going through these challenges. But the one thing that people don't see, and neither do I for that matter, is how you deal with your day-to-day clients. So how do you get through that challenge?
I'm still working on that challenge. We all are, because there's still not enough, but it has had to shape a few of my decisions. We wanted originally to be an all-day kind of service.
Yep.
So coffee in the morning, possibly, and some breakfast in the morning, and then we switch over to a lunch menu, and then we do same menu for dinner as well.
Yeah.
So it was a 3-day service.
Yeah.
That was the idea. But obviously we don't have enough staff and we've had to cut shifts, and we've had to make the decision. The Mayflower originally being more cafe lunch, we've had to move shift towards, okay, with this menu and everything that we do, we really want to focus on dinner. So we hone in on and double down on pushing dinner.
Okay.
So we've had to focus and bring out all our resources to our lunch and dinner services.
Yep.
Particularly dinner. So we've decided we're going to go stay as consistent as we can with dinner. We go Wednesday to Saturday, and do or die, those are the nights we're going to open.
Yeah.
And then the rest will follow along. So if we can open for 3 lunches, we open for 3 lunches. If we can open for more lunches, we can open for more lunches. And eventually, if we can open consistently most lunches and most dinners, then we can start thinking about breakfast. So that's the way we've tackled it, because Sydney is a very interesting space. There's not many all-day diners that are successful.
No.
Melbourne, on the other hand, has a couple of all-day diners that are quite busy, that have worked over the years. But Sydney, you're relatively known as either a breakfast lunch or a brunch, they say, or a dinner place. You don't really go to a cafe for dinner.
No.
Not in Sydney. And so we were trying to shake that up, right? And have that offering to be able to serve more and more people.
Yep.
And at the moment, with the current climate, we can only do our lunch and dinners. So we've had to work backwards from there.
Yeah. And how's that challenge for you, considering your background in running such successful morning and lunch venues?
That's a great question. That's the learning curve for me. Absolutely. I've had to go back to the books, start learning, ask for suggestions from people in the industry, learn from my staff. There's some of my staff have been in the restaurant game for a lot longer than I have.
Yeah, okay.
And I've had to learn from them, hire restaurant managers, and see how they operate and combine my world and their world, and to see how we can get this running. But it has been one hell of a ride, because setting it up, it was such a challenge, and it was such a big, for me, it was a big project. You've got so many heads in each department, and gathering staff in this climate, and then training, and then working with what you got, and then overlooking a cafe by day and then a restaurant by night has been pretty strange. So I had to take a few weeks off most of my other projects to focus on my health and make sure that the restaurants are running.
Yeah.
But look, I'm at a stage now where, look, we're not open as much as we'd like yet still, but I had noticed something. I had noticed that I had been focusing so much on opening the business and the finances of it all, that I've lost sight and focus on my other store and the staff development.
Okay.
And that's something that I've decided to work on a lot more, and to build and craft. The other week I came up with something, and it was 2 words, and the 2 words are crafting artists.
Okay.
The Mayflower sentence was always about collaborating with artists. That's one of its strongest narratives.
Yep.
We've got one of our signature pieces is with Rafiq Anadol, a renowned New York artist. Sold millions of dollars of artwork. So these most recent projects sold for 1.38 mil.
Yeah, wow.
Some amazing things. And then Amy Tai from Don Delamore, she's done our butterfly habitat installations.
Yep.
Again, amazing. I believe our chefs are also artists. We've collaborated with some of the best chefs in the industry. They've worked at some of the most amazing restaurants, and they craft something amazing. Our front of house and our bar people are also artists. It's a craft
100%.
to meet people, to create these recipes. And so I believe that if we double down and focus on their development, so that they can level up in their industry by where they're at the moment, where do we go from here? I don't have the answers for them. I can't teach them, but I could provide the resource to hopefully help them. And maybe we can go together to check out a new and upcoming restaurant to see how's the service being done, what kind of food are they doing, or I could take them and introduce them to colleagues in the industry to see how they can improve their craft, or people that they can grow with. And by doubling down on that, I think eventually, very quickly, our customers and our clients will receive a better experience.
Yeah, okay.
In turn, hopefully that will build profitability.
Sustainable profitabilities.
Yeah. So we could use that to reinvest in our staff, and the cycle continues.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I feel like I've had to really think about recently, despite all the hardships of setting up a new business.
That's amazing. It's funny, of all the people in the world to fault themselves on their commitment, it's ridiculous, because you're committed to a fault. Like, I've never met a person more committed to their goals, like genuine. So to find that may have been happening within your own ranks is quite commendable. And it happens, right? Like when you're catching the ball over here, it's often that you didn't even realize that you not only dropped the ball, but dropped the eggs and everything else behind you.
Yeah.
And so sometimes getting a chance to recalibrate was what's not only nice, it's necessary.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important to bring more awareness into our space and to check in, because sometimes we're, like you said, we're just running all the time.
Yep.
And then we don't realize what we're really missing out on. And
Yeah.
yes, of course, it's important to think about all the finances and all the building and stuff like that. But as soon as that's up, like you've got to focus on other things, or you got to delegate and then refocus your energy on other things. And so I feel like this is probably one of the most important things that I need to focus on.
Yeah, okay, cool. It's not a bad thing to understand there, but you mentioned it there as well. Sustainable profitability. It's businesses, without thinking with that capitalist mindset, businesses are built on profit. Without profit, your business is unsuccessful. There's got to be ones in the column and no negatives in the other. Otherwise, you haven't got a business, right?
Yeah.
But then the sustainability of that must be a challenge, because I know you've got the similar mindset to me in that it's not just about taking dollars. Like it's about creating a sustainable business, something that will actually be able to move forward and grow around. I think that's often something we forget to look at. And especially it must be hard for you because you've got staff and it's got to be sustainable for them as well, because otherwise we're playing with people's jobs, people's livelihoods.
That's it. And that's where we go back to that Maslow theory, is that it's not enough for people to just earn money anymore.
No.
And that's why we're in such a difficult space of competition in terms of staffing, is that people are paying people ridiculous amounts of money at the moment in different industries. It's crazy.
One of them.
And so money is no longer just the minimal need. And now it goes on to how can it improve their lives? What is the work-life balance? What's the benefit, the other benefits for them besides that?
Yeah.
And so,
why is it beneficial to work for the Mayflower?
Yeah.
As opposed to ABC kitchen down the road.
You've got all these other major joints. And so it's hard with those. We have to figure that out and figure out, okay, how can we create loyalty? How can we create a culture where it nurtures them?
Yeah.
The meaning. And that is a challenge, but working on it.
The culture of creating culture it has to be one of the most difficult things. I think about it every day as well. It has to be one of the most difficult things to try and create, because it's one of the only things we heard about. Everyone was saying, oh, we need to look for greater culture, but no one had the solution. And so I think it's also not saying it's been detrimental, but it's okay. So, when you ask somebody, I've been asked many times and not had the answer. Someone goes, what do you really want to do? I can guarantee you 9 out of 10 people can't answer that question. Like, I like to go fishing. Oh, so you want to become a fisherman? No. I like to paint. Oh, you want to become a painter? No. So what is that balance? Like, because I'm sure you've been guilty of it. I've been guilty of it many times. Turning your hobby into a business is the dumbest thing you could ever do. Because it takes the fun out of doing anything. Like, I like to bake cakes. Therefore, I'm going to start baking them professionally. No, don't. Or do that. Hopefully you work it out. But, 1 in 1,000, 1 in 10,000 are the ones that are actually going to smash it. I'm not trying to tell anybody not to start their small business. No, I'm also one of the people that will always nurture and promote talent. This is just the opposite scope, because I think having all that time to think about what was fulfilling us led people or led society to think that side hustle was what we needed, and that side hustle should then become our profession. So it's an interesting, I think this next 6 to 12 months is going to be really interesting, because we might see this full circle change in people's belief system. And I have no idea what the right answer is, because obviously, like yourself, I'm trying to work it out myself.
Yeah.
But it's crazy. It's crazy.
There's this question I've been thinking about lately is, we've just spoken about focusing on other people to help the team grow and stuff like that. And it also reflected on how are we leveling up ourselves as well over the past year or from now.
Something told me you were going to ask this question.
Yeah. So, Deb, how have you been leveling up over the past year, or what are you thinking about leveling up on?
I have to be brutally honest. The last 12 months, since our chat, the last 12 months have probably been the worst I have ever concentrated on taking care of myself. It's like, that's as open and honest as I can be, because similar to what you were alluding to before, coming out of what was about 5 months of not being able to work, all I did was get back into it. And then you mentioned your health. It was just in the last 2 weeks, it's something that I've noticed. When you're working 6.5 days a week, there's actually not enough time to rest. There is no rest. And whilst I'll still do many things in between, try and maintain a healthy meditation practice, try and eat well, try and actually stop and pause and actually take a breath. When you're up at, I don't wake up as early as you, but if I'm up at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, and then I'm home and then get to bed at 1-ish, 2 o'clock in the morning, to then do it again. And that could mean anything from placing orders to speaking to suppliers to last night I was sending quotes at midnight, which is sorry to my clients, but that's when you're getting them. It was the only time of the night that I could get them out. I'm sure they can read them in the morning. It starts to becoming quite all-encompassing. It has become a wicked balance of where does it shift? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that half answered what you were saying, but I guess but what it did do for me specifically, and it happened over the weekend and very openly yesterday, it said, okay, no, you need to pause. You feel tired. You look tired. Take a pause. What can you eliminate from your system which isn't working for the greater good right now? So I made a list, had a conversation with my brother, who's quite close to me. And it was just because we work on another business together, and he just happened to be the person I was talking to at the time that I was writing this. And then said, okay, we're going to start eliminating certain things, change my own value proposition to work out what the most important things are. Often when you're running on that treadmill, and the treadmill only gets faster based on momentum, you forget that you can actually step off it. And the stepping off it is active choice that I think we all try not to make because it's the hard one, right? The saying no's, the shifting, or actually running through your own belief system, because we live in a society of yes. And I know we've read all those books and the subtle art of this and how to do this, and about how many people actually, we just read the books. Come on, let's be serious. I've read them too. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, it's funny that this all came in yesterday, like as late as yesterday. It was around 7 p.m. when I was leaving the shop. The last conversation I had was around that. And I went, all right, this is the list of what I am going to do. This is the list of what I'm not going to do. And then hopefully the next 6 months will be paved based on that. I am extremely proud of the amount of work that I've been able to put in, but it does come at the detriment of your health. So I don't know if anything's adding, because it's no secret that without health, there will be no success. It is, be that physical, mental, emotional. I take emotional and mental, I set them aside from each other. I do believe that they can live separately. And then all the other in-between bits. Without it, doesn't matter what you do. You can be in tip-top, like I'll joke about it. This is a good one. I'm at the weight that I was when I was like 23 or 24 years old. And then I turned 40 like a month ago, or a month and a bit ago. So that's pretty crazy. So my physical health is pretty good outside of the fact that I'm probably not resting enough. But that is byproduct of having to deal with the stresses about the things. So you need to keep up that side of things to prop other bits up. But yeah, holistically, I've been very lazy. I took the easy route. I run the treadmill. I did the hamster thing.
What you're talking, it seems a lot to me of similarly to what people had called the revenge spend, right? After
Okay.
periods where you couldn't really do much during COVID. So then after the shops opened up and then everyone started spending,
Crazy.
I would call it the revenge work now. Whereas you couldn't go into the office, you couldn't do like certain things, or certain businesses couldn't operate. So then once the gates were opened, it's okay, time to get onto it. Revenge work, let's do it, bam, and you do it. And then as it starts to open more and more, meaning that more and more people can go back into the office, more and more business starts to come back, that perpetual cycle starts to accelerate. And then this is where I start to see burnout happen.
Yeah.
This is where it's like people going, okay, whoa, what is happening? You went from 0 to 100 to 1,000% in a couple of months.
In a couple of months.
And then it's tough. People were getting straight back into winter now. The flu season's in. People's immune systems are down. People are getting sick. It's a vicious, I wouldn't even call it a vicious cycle. It's a vicious hockey curve at the moment.
Totally. Well, this is all new. I was talking to a client of mine who's a paramedic and coming just out of lockdown, and he did warn. He said, take care of your body health because your immune system is low. And I think it's something you talk about this a lot, and you've educated me a lot in this. So these are the steps that we take. But because we haven't been interacting, we're not ready for it. And it's cold. But okay, the accelerated perpetual cycle. It's interesting. Revenge work.
And just onto that point, you mentioned that yesterday you made that list.
Yes.
And so what are some of the things on that list that you're changing so that this accelerated perpetual cycle starts to slow down for you?
Man, I have been doing this for some time now, but now just don't do everything that's asked of you, like full stop. And I know that sounds a bit gnarly, but I've cancelled this year alone, which is not my favorite thing to boast about, but this year alone, I've said no to 3 weddings, 2 christenings, some family birthdays, and I get my life to turn up. It's what I've done. It's what I do. And the fact that I can't go to these 3 weddings is actually breaking my heart. But dims the bricks. And unfortunately, things in my life are actually needing to take sort of a priority. And that's it, the end, because I'm the only one that can solve this. So that's one thing. Now, a lot of those decisions I made initially were based on business, but now I'm going to push them into my day-to-day. No, I will not work until 8 p.m. Hard no. Get home, turn off the laptop, cook a nice meal. Watch some TV if I want to. I love to eat. I love to dine. It's a thing. I like to have cocktails. I like to drink wine. But now it's all right, we'll limit those days. It doesn't even have to be once a week. It might be once a fortnight. Who knows? It might be once a month eventually. So really start making space for rest as opposed to leisure. It was an interesting little conversation. I had this with my little cousin. I won't call him my baby cousin because that'd be rude. And he's a young lad. He's 21 years old. And I spoke to him on the weekend, and he's a very ambitious young kid. And he's talking to me about how he's formulating. Reminds me, he would have been like a young us, Kevin. He's read all the books. He's listening to all the podcasts. He's going to become a billionaire by the time he's 23, 21 right now. And then he's going to retire, keep all the money up and do it again, because that's what you do. And so I'm sitting there loving all of this conversation and all the youthful exuberance while I'm sitting in my stall going, can you get out of here so I can do some work? No, that's it. And I just said to him, hey, if you're around this afternoon, because I don't see him very often, he was with his partner. I'm like, you guys want to catch a glass of wine or something? Hit me up. This was on Saturday afternoon. And he's like, no, Daddy, I'm not drinking at the moment. I'm like, cool, that's awesome. Based on what? And he's like, so I've given myself a few goals, and that'll be my reward when I hit that goal. And I'm like, all right, young kid. And it was the most basic of conversations. And I really that's how he structured his life. But again, making these decisions last night, I was like, when did we stop doing it? So not that I'm going to go that drastic because it's not in my kind of thing, but introducing those elements of reward. We don't need to reward ourselves every day. We reward ourselves by succeeding in our own life. But success also helps come, like momentum brings success. So if we're constantly putting in roadblocks and obstacles in front of ourselves, then, sorry, if you guys are watching this, I'm waving at this beautiful family that just walked past. I haven't seen them for a while, so I couldn't help myself. If we constantly rewarded ourselves for not meeting our own goals, and if that goal is a day-to-day goal, week goal, monthly, whatever it might be, then we're building a false sense of acceptance of what we're doing. Sorry, back to the original question. I guess I'm just going back to basics, mate. You mentioned realizing that you're not nurturing a certain side of your business. I realized I wasn't nurturing myself.
Yep.
And saying no, full stop, just making smarter, heavier decisions. The easiest decision is the one is yes to the first thought that came to your mind. And I think we thought that, and in this accelerated perpetual cycle, as you worded it, it's so easy to say yes to whatever pops into your head. And because we're on the hamster wheel of living that life, it's so important that we all just take a step back and build some barriers between that momentum of life or that momentum of societal need of us. Whereas nothing's really going to happen if you don't turn up. Like, you might have missed out on something small, but I'm sure if it was that important, you could find a way to make it up.
I think you brought out a great point earlier, making space for rest, not leisure. And it's really a strong point for people to become more aware of, is that you need to build more rest into your schedule, especially at the moment where everything is running so fast and so much is happening, and it's expected.
Totally. Sorry, that's the word. There you go. It's expected. Answer that email within 10 minutes. Pick up the phone every single time it rings. Answer that text the second it gets sent to you. Now, when it's business, sure, we've got SLAs. I don't know what they're called in real life. I just remember those from my finance days, from my tech finance days. Service level agreements. Horrible. So I'll pose that question to everybody, and I want everyone to think about this. When is it acceptable to choose us? What is the acceptable amount of time for us to give ourselves in order to then deal with our societal abilities? And do we actually have any societal responsibilities? Or have we got complete control over the whole time?
Some big questions there, Dan.
Man, I've had to ask myself them. And also, I believe I was already asking myself those questions on the weekend. I think yesterday just perpetuated it. I just gave myself time to answer it. And again, my brother will probably listen to this. I do work with my brother quite closely. And he's not only my brother, he's my best mate. But we also run a business together. And there is times where there's strong no. And he'll put strong no's on me and I'll put strong no's on him. And that's because we've allowed ourselves to do that. At what stage does that become part of just the way we live our lives? And sorry, I haven't seen you in 6 months, but I'm not coming out.
Yeah.
Or I get it's your birthday, but I'm not coming out drinking. Or I'm not going to that dinner, or I'm not partaking in whatever. I'm sleeping until 1 o'clock this afternoon because that's what I want.
Mate, I'm not really a good person to speak to that question.
You're the best at saying no. It's amazing. Kevin's also like a Zen master at no. So like you have his own timeline, it's the best. Maybe we'll just need to take Kevin's timeline and go like heavy in that. Because I'm obviously talking for the lay person, and then you've got mastery level, which is Kev. So I don't know, maybe it's like this whole Luke Skywalker Kenobi thing.
Mate, I don't know about that. But I do have a different, I wouldn't say a different perspective. I approach things differently in that sense where, so I like to think that I can only speak to it with my own experience. And I like to think that I approach these situations in terms of sprints and blocks.
Yep.
Okay, time to open a restaurant. Bam, drop everything else, get that done, and then you can wind down a bit. But the thing is, then I reflect on, what is it to wind down? And then my wind down is then thinking about and working on other things. So I'm not winding down.
And
But I just really enjoy creating, and the process is something that I really enjoy.
yep,
The variety of working on different projects and understanding and being creative with people and connecting with them gives me energy.
yep,
Of course, there is the basic need. You can't be working yourself to the bone, little sleep, not eating, not exercising. That is the base necessity.
yes,
Reducing your drinking, all that stuff. We've read that's up to you to keep accountable.
totally.
Like it's going to the gym, like keeping meditation practice, all that stuff. It's the base need. It's up to you if you want to do it or not.
Totally.
But if you maintain that, then everything else, I tend to work in sprints. But after that, I'm not huge on taking breaks on doing nothing. Even if I have some time off, I'll record an audio journal, or I'll start thinking about different ideas for some of the projects I'm working on. I'll go out and walk and let ideas stew. It's not so much of doing nothing for me.
No, I agree. I agree. Totally agree.
And I may crash and burn one day, who knows? But it's been many years since then, and I don't feel like I've taken any mental or physical damage in that sense. So I think I can keep it going.
Man, I think you're onto something. Sorry, again, I was just waving at this. Because, okay, so I was talking to a buddy the other day, and he's, what have you watched recently? And we both came to the conclusion that we can't remember the last time we watched a movie. We've had our iPads in front of us, we've got laptops. And so it's never like concentrated on nothing, as you said, which is quite interesting. And then I proposed to him, I'm like, so are we doing it wrong? If this is the right, if we believe that what we're doing is correct, are we actually doing it wrong?
Yeah.
And I'm like, because I'm like you, if it's some crazy idea will come to your mind and you'll be like, why are crocodiles the color they are? You'll just start Googling it. You'll end up in a rabbit hole. Can I brew coffee without coffee beans? Like, whatever. No, just saying. But it's interesting that that has become just part of your process. So that's the exciting part. Finding complete comfort in creation. That's the hobby. I was asked recently, what's your hobby? What do you do for fun? I'm like, ideate, come up with other ways to do things, come up with other ways to design, come up with other ways to be me. Like, isn't that a hobby?
Yeah.
Might not be. People might think we're lame.
You never know. That's that absolutely right. People are like, what are these?
You're like geeks. Like, don't listen work. I'm a serial entrepreneur, you know. It's like, you know, like we're not that lame, I promise.
Dan, switching gears for a sec.
Okay.
Earlier, we mentioned that you had turned 40 earlier, a month or 2 months ago.
Yeah.
So the big 4-0.
You want to know about?
Did you have any reflections of the past decade? And if that is not a big enough question, what is your focus on the next decade?
Damn.
So reflections of the past decade. Basically, I'm trying to reel out any advice you have for people going through their 30s.
Okay. Yeah, I did a little bit. Like, we don't really give ourselves a chance to pause. Like, my reflection was, yeah, maybe I should have lent into time more during the previous decade. And what I mean by that is giving myself more time to travel, more time to just do stuff, whatever. Doesn't matter. Read more books. Whatever. It was one thing. There was a project, there was a personal mental project that I didn't quite achieve during that period. That was something that I've definitely thought about. And then my family threw me a really beautiful surprise birthday party, which was really nice, which I wasn't expecting to happen. And weirdly, most of those relationships were people that I'd met in the last 3 years, which are maybe even 5 to 8 years. Basically in the time that I've lived in this world. Sorry to anyone that didn't make it. I didn't invite it. I didn't know about it. You would have been there had I known, even though I know you. But a lot of those relationships are based on my current path, which is my business. But they're quite strong and nurtured relationships. So I found that an achievement, if that made any sense. I felt for the first time as a small business owner in a long time, I felt a real great sense of personal achievement because I just got to think about what I had done in the last 10 years, which essentially were lose my family, like a really strong family member, and then choose a life path which was the opposite of conventional. So I went from grief to try and now build this. And I do believe that I'm still on that. Yeah. So that was pretty deep. But yeah, I got to lean into what I've done, which was quite nice because I don't think we do that enough. And I know we get told to do that. Every once in a while, we should just sit back and go, what were our wins? And if it's a small win, hey, I made it through the week without dropping a coffee, I don't know, or tripping over or eating takeout or whatever you choose that win to be. There doesn't need to be a reward. There just needs to be a mental acknowledgement. And so that was cool. I got to do that. Probably just in my fragile state, just sitting there because my family was like chilling. It was kind of cool. And then everything starts to hurt at 40. Like I promise. I like to think I'm in pretty good shape. Everything hurts. My hip hurts. My knee hurts. My shoulders hurting. The back of my neck hurts. I'm like, and it happened in 3 days. It wasn't happening over weeks. I promise you, I was sitting on the lounge the other day. I went to stand up and I felt something going in my back. And I went, are you serious? Like, so that's be aware, guys. It's going to happen. You might have to start wearing orthotics or something. I think I'm going to go out and buy some like walking shoes to walk to work. Even though I don't like to do that, I'm going to have to buy some like hush puppies or something. So that was a thing. And then like the second part of that question, years ago, I met a gentleman and he was in his early 40s and he'd started to run marathons. And I asked him why. And he said, Danny, I've got 3 kids under 10. So by the time I'm 50, they're going to be in their 20s and I want to be as fit as that. So he explained to me the steps that he was taking. He was quite successful or quite achieved man. Success is questionable, but I believe he was quite achieved. And he told me fitness was a big part of that. And then he did say, and I think I said this in the last podcast, he wanted to be that hot dad walking down the street. I'm like, legend, guy that had a better body than his sons and daughters on the beach. Cool. If that was his life, most people, not everyone wants to be that. But it led me to think. And whilst I believe I've done a bit, now it's really leaning into being the most rounded 50-year-old that I am or can be, that a holistic designer, be that physically, mentally, and really lean into being able to nurture what that looks like through action as opposed to through words. Because it's easy to talk smack. It's so easy to say we're going to achieve things. Like, I'm going to become a billionaire and retire next year. I just said it, like, whatever. But we all often neglect, and you say it a lot, the proof is in the pudding. And without the actual result, the words are worthless.
Yeah.
So that is my 10-year plan. Yeah. And it's already started. It's like I said, it started just about a week. There was certain things I started doing a couple of weeks ago. There's a task that started today, or technically yesterday. And then we'll see, because taking my life aside and taking the words that we use like legacy and all that kind of garbage as far as I'm concerned. I don't believe in legacy. Like, I believe in life. And then that'll be like, yeah, if I'm still really young. Like, I feel like I think like a really wise 25-year-old kid with the experience of a 40-year-old man that lives like a 21-year-old kid. But then with now hindsight, a lot of hindsight, like, you've got to learn from your failures, of which I've had a fair few. And you can achieve so much in 2 years, let alone in 10 years.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's Daniel, the most dapper looking 40-year-old I know. And I'm
Coming
sure
with
you'll be the most dapper 50-year-old.
But it's kind of cool, man. Like, I don't know, you get to wear suits for a living, it's great.
Yeah.
But not wear suits because it's how you have to turn up dressed. It's because you choose to. So however people choose to do that, I think we should all lean into it.
Yeah.
Plus, it's an easy choice in the morning. I don't have to think too much about what I wear.
Dan, you mentioned earlier there was a particular mental project that never eventuated.
Oh, yeah.
What may I ask what that project was about?
It was a visualization project. And I've been watching your progression, and I'll skip on to you because I didn't know when it would come by into this. So I'll ask you some questions in a second. There's a correlation between art as the physicality and the mental space. So I challenged myself a few years ago to draw as much as I could, and I just didn't. I do, but I did. And there's an amazing designer by the name of Aitul Thrup. He's an English-based, I think Turkish background, from off the top of my head. Central St. Martin's, who were in the end, because he went the long way around getting through art school. And he started drawing every day 10 years ago. Funnily enough, just last week. And his drawings are quite emotive because they're all about the physical body, but they're a little bit eerie, like these caricatures that he drums out to communicate. They're pretty cool. And then he's just come back just this week and told everybody about how it started. Mm. And I caught onto this project 4 years, and it was something that I'd mentally challenged myself to do. Now, doing something every day for 10 years is pretty damn hard.
That's right? Discipline consistency to the next level.
Right. Like doing something every second day for 10 years is equally as difficult. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to draw every day, but I do believe in the correlation between mental communication and physical communication, be it whether or not you choose to write, draw, whatever, take a photo, but there's a physicality in that process. And that's the important. It's not necessarily the result, it's the action. So that's the project. And it's quite confronting. I did do it quite consistently for a while. And some of the things that come out are pretty crazy. So it is a mental project, but it is still aligned with my art practice, if that's what you want to call it. But it's interesting because I know I've been watching you develop as an artist and realizing that your development has been quite accelerated. Now, how has it come to this stage? So I'm going to segue to you really quick. And how have you found shifting a mental idea into what is now a practice?
I never thought in a million years I'd do any sort of art. I did have a similar mental project at one point, and I said, you know what, I'm going to get into water painting or something.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Just give it a shot. Something with different varieties and develop a new hobby or something like that.
Yeah.
I never got around to it, but instead I fell into something else. And at the time, it was when the Mayflower Darling had just opened, and we were blowing up around different circles, and people started giving us offers, thinking about expansion and so on. And we had been offered a space in Summerhill. It was quite a large space. I think it was like something crazy, 350, 400 plus square meters.
Yeah, well, that's good.
And I was thinking, mate, how the hell are we going to pull that many people into that area to make a profit, like to make it a sustainable business?
Incredible, yeah.
Like even if you had amazing coffee, amazing alcohol, amazing food, I just don't think in that area, in that particular location, we'd be able to pull that much traffic without something more.
Whereabouts, sorry?
In Summerhill.
Yeah, okay.
It wasn't even like the main strip of Surrey Hill where it's really busy. It's further out.
Yeah.
And then I thought, okay, if that was the creative challenge, how would we approach it? And I thought you have to bring something more like augmented reality or
Yeah.
design, some sort of technological design that would draw people to come there and check it out.
Yeah.
And so that was the initial idea. And so, all right, let's play and go down that rabbit hole. So I went down, started doing some research. Okay, projection mapping and understanding how these people do these amazing installations on walls with all this digital art media and so on. And it's like, okay, great. So there's somebody in Australia done something similar, an Australian artist. I started to reach out to them and find out, okay, what's the go here? And they told me about the project. It's the mural artist is one person, and then you've got the digital projection artist, which is another person.
Yeah.
You're looking at paying 70, 80K for just the mural, and then you've got to pay another 60, 70K plus its fee for the digital artist. And by the time you look at things and it adds up, it's like, wow, that's a lot of money for a single installation.
Yeah.
For a restaurant, for that matter. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I can learn to do some of these digital projection myself, work with digital art media, and then possibly down the track, I could collaborate with physical artists, whether that's a mural, sculpture, whatever it may be. And I could do digital mapping work with them,
Yeah.
develop it over there. And so that's how my learning began, and that was end of 2020, so November 2020, end of November 2020. That's when we started. I started looking in and got our first projector and started experimenting at home and all that stuff.
Only 18 months ago.
Yeah, about there. And from there, I started to go knee deep in understanding, okay, what makes these installations immersive? What makes them interesting? Why do people want to check them out? And I started doing courses, and I did a generative art course at Simon Fraser University, and started to look at all these different approaches people were taking and interviewing people in those fields, immersing myself in that whole industry. I'm still no expert now, but I'm learning a lot more about how to use technology and combine that with art. And fast forward to this day, I did end up in collaboration with an artist, Amy Tai from Don Delamore, who created a beautiful 2 massive butterflies. She's hand sculpted and done with with so many and filled with daisies and hydrangeas, and it's an amazing piece. And I did the digital projection mapping onto it, and that's one of our signature pieces at the restaurant.
Yeah.
It gives it life in the evening, and it's almost like a small vivid piece in our space.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
And I've gone on to develop my digital arts media skills to then do a launch with a non-for-profit called The Butterfly Effect.
Yeah.
We've launched up to date over three different collections at the moment, all designed in-house. And the journey's only just begun. We're looking to do more and more collaborations over the years, but it's that constant practice of being inspired, I think, has really kept me curious. I've been reading books, I've been looking at online content, I've been looking at other artists and what they've been developing and how they are developing that, and looking to their process and systems and playing around with different software, different coding, and it's really expanded my mind in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing. Now, I've been very privileged to experience these or some of these artworks. I know that you look a lot into generative art or AI, and then the mental space. Some of the work you've been doing actually looks to map the physicality of a room. Am I right?
So
kind of doing that?
With the digital projection,
My eyes are generally closed when it's happening. So.
all right. Okay, so I think what you're alluding to is meditation classes that happens on the weekly.
Yeah.
And combining art into the whole meditative space. And yeah, so every week, still, it's been 3 years running now for Beyond Meditations.
Yeah.
We've been running weekly classes for a long time now. And to add another element to it, I've done some projection work during the whole process to give it another element of visual. And most of the time, people are meditating with the eyes closed, so they don't necessarily see the visuals all the time, but they do walk into a space that has audio and visual that helps calm the space. But then there's also the display of light with their eyes closed as well. It gives them different dynamic, and people can technically still see colors and movements with their eyes closed still. And so while that is happening with the visualization practice, because it's not such, the meditation practice is not so much of a passive one. It's a very active one. So it's a lot of visualization, a lot of thought-provoking questions. And so the cues with the visuals that operate while you're meditating help spark and give it another dimension of thinking at the same time. I feel like it does add an element to the experience rather than no visual.
Most definitely. And also the audio, they seem to go hand in hand. Having been in that class a few times, I can definitely say that the audio experience mapped with, or like aligned with, like you're saying, those light sparks, but definitely an enhancer, and obviously designed with purpose. Yeah, cool. Man, that's exciting. Like, again, watching someone, like you've once said to me, you're not a designer or not an artist, but I've watched you craft many businesses with an artisanal sense, from being extremely competitive and awarded prizes for such, to then going on and growing your cafes, and then your now restaurants, which are quite highly regarded. I don't go past having many conversations with my girlfriends, and they're like, "You were at the Mayflower?" I'm like, "Yes." They're all very much in awe that I get to hang out with the owner of the Mayflower. But and also because they like your restaurants, right? Yeah, but I would say the process of developing these businesses is that of an artist. But then you go and like hunt how to become an artist. That shit's great.
It definitely has been a journey, no doubt, but it's given me this whole new life of looking at things and another element to add to all the other crafts that I'm working on.
Yeah, cool.
It's been able to add value to many different projects that I've worked on, and I feel like it is going to be a lifelong practice. So another one added to the works.
Awesome. So there we go. And on that note, if you ask me what the next 10 years look like for me, obviously not here talking about business, but what do they look like for you? Outside of the obvious, like we could talk about business, and that's a given.
I think in the next decade, I'd like to start a family during that time. I'd like to move forward with that part of my life as well. I feel like it's the right time to do that. I do want to expand my personal life as well as my professional life.
Nice.
But outside of that, with my working life, it's not so much particularly goals that I'm after anymore. I think I just focus on development of it.
Yes.
And it's not so much as to say I want to be there with that business in this time frame. It's more about, look, these projects are a long haul projects for me, whether they're 10, 15, 20 years down the track. I will continue to build upon them. And so my only hope is to continue to develop myself so that I can continue to develop my projects further. And another thing that has come to mind is also probably taking some time off as well. And it's not something I do enough of.
Yeah.
And it is exactly what you were saying and before, is take time off to do things. And I think we've had 2 years of lockdown and not really moving around much. I think it's time to go out and get inspired again, do some traveling, and to learn and see and observe and experience while I still can.
Yeah.
Those are a few things that I want to focus on the next decade.
Yeah, man. Again, you asked that question. And I think it is that. Personal development is so multifaceted. And reading a book is one thing, but what are the actions? What are the action steps that you take after reading that book with all this knowledge that we're armed with? And how do you lean into that? And I think that's the important one, right? Yeah. Because without action, again, there's nothing.
Yeah. Recently, and this is, I feel like, very poignant to what we go through as people in the space, but I think a lot of other people can take from it as well. One of my most recent audio journal pieces that I've released is about
a topic called Top of Mind, and that's from an article I read from Paul Graham. And it's about noticing and becoming aware of what is top of mind for us majority of the time, and what are we filling that space with. And if you're not sure what your top of mind is, what comes to the top of mind when you're in the shower, when you're just going for a leisurely walk, what comes to mind most of the time for you? And he mentions that there are two sinkholes. One is about money, and the other is about disputes, generally emotional disputes.
Interesting.
And if we are always occupied with either thinking constantly about money, whether we're making money or losing money or whatever that is, or emotional disputes all the time, granted that if it's a priority, yes, it needs to be thought about and actioned on. But if it's not immediate and life-threatening, shifting that space and occupying it with a creative challenge is a lot more useful in that sense. Because how do you solve a creative challenge? You bring it to top of mind, you keep thinking about it, you stew on it, you brainstorm about it, you talk about it, you sleep on it, and you come up with a solution eventually.
Yep.
But if we're always having that top of mind space occupied by money or disputes, then how do we move forward with creative challenges when there is no space for it?
Interesting.
That had been quite a big revelation for me as of recent. Even though I still create and do things, I thought, okay, what am I thinking about most these days? And I realized that starting up a new restaurant, I've been very concerned about the finance part of it. And then obviously having so much staff and working on people, there is also the emotional side of it. It's just a lot of space that's occupied that I should be allocating to a more creative challenge. Like, how do we improve this culture? How do we make it a sustainable culture for growth, for example?
Yeah. I'm going to have to go back and revisit that audio. What do you call them? Audio cast? No.
Audio journal.
I'm sorry. I have listened to some, but it's interesting. It's interesting you mentioned that one specifically based on the conversation that we were just having.
Yeah.
And about those little mental projects about how yours started and how redeveloping mine. And it's hard just in society for everyone not to be consumed with finances, especially at the moment. It's like the only thing everyone's talking about. And if you turn on the news right now, I guarantee you one of the first articles will either be about housing growth, interest rates, wages, or inflation, so we don't need to talk about the big consequences of those things. And then the other thing is we know that financial stress is the biggest creator of dispute and starts to then wane on people's emotional state. Consciously trying to pull ourselves out of that by creating a creative project or sounds like a great solution to me. I was already doing it, didn't even know. Yeah, cool. All right. I do look forward to the more creative space coming from Kevin's mind. It's interesting to see, mate. It's been such a pleasure to watch that growth, because it is the creation of what the mind gives that makes you an artist, right? Not the definition. Because if it was the definition, you would never have started the project.
Yeah, that's it.
He who picks up a paintbrush might not necessarily be a painter, but he's definitely painting.
Wow, that's a great one too. Go Dan. Dan, do you have any other closing thoughts?
Man, I could never actually live up to yours. Like,
that doesn't have to be like mine. It could be just anything that you want to share.
Totally. Well, again, I'll lean into. It's funny. Both times that I've spoken to you here, and I hope this has been helpful to your listeners. And I don't want to come off as cynical or overly jovial or overly deep, but this is how I think. The classic one is, I think now that we're coming into this time of redevelopment, then obviously it's definitely what's happening in my world. It is such an important time just to take action yourself. And like you've just said, you've just spoken about that with what is top of mind and really listening to yourself. But I truly believe that this little journey started for me some time ago, but now it's week on week becoming more physical and more top of mind. But without actioning those steps for ourselves, then we're doing ourselves a disservice. And like, without being our best selves, then the people around us are not getting their best selves or getting the best representation of us. Therefore, we're doing ourselves a disservice. We're disrespecting ourselves by not letting people see the best person we are. And the only person we can be the best we are is by helping us first, then you help everyone second. What is really been in my head recent times is it's a time for action. And I think I spoke to you about this in our first conversation, or definitely during one of ours. I've joked about it, and it came out one day, and my favorite law is Newton's law. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And that's just momentum. And my path forward is based on action. Because that action then will have a reaction in some way, shape, or form in this beautiful universe of mine. And then will continue to perpetuate. But if it's positive action, then it can only be created in positive reactions. And if those reactions are seen, they're better than being heard. And if I can push that on to people that are listening to us, the more negativity we put out, what happens? We get negative back. So the more positive we put out, the more love we get back. So I'm not sure they're parting thoughts per se. It's definitely a space that's where I was at when I went to bed last night, and that's how I woke up this morning. So hopefully I'll continue to keep having a smile on my face. I like to smile at people. I like to smile at people in the street. It's like one of the funnest things that I do every day. And because you'd be surprised how many people smile back. So if we don't do these things, then we're never going to get smiled at. So yeah, I don't know. That's my parting thought. Smile at everyone you can.
It's a beautiful close. Put out positive, receive positive.
That's it, man.
Give out love, receive love. Smile, everyone.
For sure.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the show. All the links to the show notes will be available at kevinleesocial.com, spelled KEVINLY. Conversely, if you have any interviews that you'd love to recommend, please send it over to kevinleesocial@gmail.com. I'd love to connect. Thank you. Until the next episode.